Let's get right into it. Number 10. The lather is clean. That foam you love so much in your shampoo and soap? It's completely useless. You've been fooled by one of the greatest marketing tricks of the 20th century. Back in the early 1900s, soap companies had a problem. Their products worked fine, but customers didn't feel like they were working. So these companies added chemicals called sulfates to their products. These chemicals do one thing really well. They make bubbles. They started running ads telling people that if it doesn't lather, it's not cleaning. This lie spread so far that even today, most people feel like something's wrong if their soap doesn't foam up. The actual cleaning is done by molecules called surfactants. These don't need to make foam to work. Hand sanitizer kills 99.9% of germs without a single bubble. When you wash greasy dishes, the foam disappears because the surfactants are busy actually cleaning. But companies keep adding these foaming chemicals because we're addicted to the lather, and these extra chemicals they add just for foam are actually bad for your skin and hair. They strip away natural oils, making your skin dry and your hair frizzy. That's why you need moisturizer after washing your face and conditioner after shampooing. You're creating problems that force you to buy more products to fix them. Try a sulfate-free product. It might not give you that foam party you're used to, but it'll clean just as well. Maybe even better. Number 9. The shortest lie in history. Napoleon was actually 5 feet 6 inches, which was pretty average for his time, but everyone thinks he was shorter than a garden gnome because of brilliant British propaganda. The French and British used different measurements back then. The French inch was bigger than the British inch, so when French records said Napoleon was 5 feet 2 inches in French inches, the British acted like he was tiny. They started making cartoons of this tiny, angry man throwing tantrums. They'd draw big British soldiers looking down at this tiny Napoleon. The Napoleon complex is when short people act aggressive to compensate for their height. We named it after someone who wasn't even short. Napoleon actually surrounded himself with super tall soldiers in his imperial guard. So when people saw him next to these giants, they assumed he was tiny. That's like standing next to NBA players and concluding that the coach must be a hobbit. The only complex Napoleon actually had was being really good at conquering Europe. Number 8. The horned Viking helmet myth. Real Vikings never wore horned helmets. Not a single horned helmet has ever been found in any Viking archaeological dig, and wearing horns on your helmet during battle would be incredibly impractical. Your enemy could just grab those horns and use them like handles to control your head. It's essentially installing a neck-snapping feature on your battle gear. The entire horned Viking image came from one person, Carl Emil Doppler, a costume designer for operas in the 1870s. While working on Wagner's Ring Cycle opera, he needed to make Viking characters look dramatic on stage, so he added horns to their helmets. His design was such a hit that it spread everywhere. Books, paintings, and later movies all copied this completely fictional look. By the time historians could correct this mistake, the fake image was already cemented in popular culture. Today, this made-up design is so deeply rooted that even the Minnesota Vikings football team uses it as their logo. An entire NFL team's identity is based on one opera costume designer's creative decision. It's as historically accurate as thinking medieval knights rode around on segways. Number 7. The Martian invasion panic. On October 30th, 1938, millions of Americans supposedly thought aliens were invading Earth during Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio broadcast. People reportedly ran into the streets screaming, called the police in tears, and contemplated suicide to avoid being killed by Martians, but it never actually happened. The show had terrible ratings. Most people were listening to a more popular program, The Chase and Sanborn Hour, featuring ventriloquist Edgar Bergen. In 1938, a wooden puppet was beating alien invaders in the ratings. The few people who did tune in to War of the Worlds understood it was just a radio play. The broadcast announced it was fiction at the beginning, middle, and end. The real culprits behind this myth were newspapers. In 1938, newspapers were terrified of radio stealing their advertising revenue. This was their perfect chance to paint radio as dangerous. They ran headlines like, "Radio listeners in panic, taking war drama as fact." The actual evidence of panic? A few hundred people called CBS to ask if it was real. No mass hysteria, no suicides, no riots. Even Orson Welles played along with the myth. When reporters asked him about causing panic, he acted apologetic and shocked. The myth was so good for his career that he never bothered to correct it. The only invasion that actually happened that night was newspapers invading the truth. Number 6. The 10% brain myth. Imagine you bought a brand new gaming PC, but someone told you it only uses 10% of its power. That's exactly what people believe about their brains. This myth has been around forever, and movies like Lucy made it even more popular. The idea is that we only use 10% of our brains, and if we could unlock the other 90%, we'd become superhuman. But your brain isn't like a CPU running at 10% capacity. It's more like a power grid during a heat wave. Everything's running full blast all the time. Even when you're watching TikTok videos, your brain is lighting up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. Different parts are working together to process the images, understand the audio, form memories, and keep you breathing all at the same time. And when you're sleeping, your brain is still partying harder than a college freshman on spring break. It's sorting through memories, repairing cells, and making you dream. The myth started with a misquote of William James, a psychologist from the 1800s. He was talking about human potential, saying we only use a small part of our possible mental resources. But someone turned, "We could be doing more with our minds," into 90% of our brain is just taking up space. If we really only use 10% of our brains, getting a head injury would be like playing Russian roulette with a Nerf gun. You'd have a 90% chance of hitting a useless part. But any damage to your brain, no matter where it is, causes problems. Because every part of your brain has a job to do. It's like a really efficient office where nobody's slacking off. The people who believe this myth are using 100% of their brain to be 100% wrong. Number 5. The MSG Scare. In 1968, a letter to the New England Journal of Medicine changed the food industry forever. A doctor named Robert Homan Kwok wrote about getting sick after eating Chinese food. He described symptoms like numbness, weakness, and heart palpitations, but it was all a prank. Years later, it came out that the letter was written as a friendly bet between doctors. They wanted to see if they could get published in this prestigious journal. The media jumped on this story immediately. Suddenly, every headache after eating Chinese food was blamed on MSG. Chinese restaurants started going out of business. But MSG is in practically everything you eat. That tomato you had for lunch, full of MSG. That cheese on your sandwich, loaded with it. Your body even produces MSG naturally. MSG is just sodium plus glutamate, an amino acid that's in most proteins. It's about as dangerous as table salt. Scientists have done hundreds of studies trying to prove MSG is harmful. They've failed every single time. The FDA has classified it as generally recognized as safe since 1959. People still claim they get Chinese restaurant syndrome when eating MSG. Yet these same people happily munch on Doritos, which are literally coated in MSG. Those no MSG signs you see aren't health warnings. They're the lasting impact of a practical joke that turned into a racist panic. Number 4. The head heat hoax. This myth started with a military experiment gone wrong back in the 1950s. The US military was testing how long soldiers could survive in freezing conditions. They dressed these guys up in thick Arctic survival suits, but left their heads completely exposed. It's like testing how waterproof a boat is, while drilling holes in the bottom. These soldiers lost most of their heat through their heads, because that's the only part of their body that wasn't covered in thermal gear. The military then published their finding. 40 to 45% of body heat is lost through the head, and mothers everywhere started using this as a fact. But your head only makes up about 10% of your body's surface area. If you were actually losing 40% of your heat through your head, it would be like having a radiator installed up there. Modern studies show that heat loss is simply proportional to the exposed skin area. Your head might feel colder because your face and scalp have more temperature sensors than other parts of your body. It's like having more security cameras in one area. You're just more aware of what's happening there. But the military's flawed study made it into their field manual, which made it into public knowledge. And that's how one poorly designed experiment turned into 70 years of people thinking their heads are secretly space heaters. Number 3. The breakfast lie. Before 1944, most Americans either skipped breakfast or ate dinner leftovers. Some even had beer soup for breakfast. Then General Foods created the slogan, "Breakfast is the most important meal of the day," to sell more grape nut cereal. This all started with Dr. John Harvey Kellogg in the early 1900s. He ran a sanitarium in Michigan and believed eating meat made people aggressive and immoral. He even thought yogurt enemas could cure disease. Kellogg invented cornflakes as an anti-pleasure food. He genuinely believed bland food would keep people pure. His brother Will saw a business opportunity. He added sugar to the cornflakes, started the Kellogg's company, and marketed cereal as a healthy breakfast option. This enraged John. These companies then funded biased research claiming kids who ate breakfast did better in school. They even got doctors to endorse their products. Grape nuts ran ads in the 1930s claiming their cereal could cure malaria and appendicitis. Modern studies are showing the opposite of what we've been told. Skipping breakfast through intermittent fasting might actually improve weight loss and brain function. That most important meal advice isn't medical science. It's just an 80-year-old marketing campaign that sold billions in cereal. Number 2. The lie on your spinach can. Back in 1870, a German scientist was measuring the iron content in spinach. Everyone thinks he accidentally put the decimal point in the wrong place, making spinach appear to have 10 times more iron than it actually does. Scientists kept quoting this wrong number without checking it. Then Popeye the Sailor Man came along in 1929, and suddenly everyone was convinced that spinach was basically liquid iron. When they finally caught this mistake in the 1930s, it was too late. The myth had already taken root in people's minds, but in 2010, a researcher discovered something shocking. The decimal point story itself was completely false. The original German scientist never made that error at all. The real reason for the confusion was much simpler. Back then, they measured dried spinach instead of fresh spinach. Dried spinach naturally has more iron because it's concentrated, but nobody bothered to mention this crucial detail. The truth is, spinach does contain iron, but your body can only absorb about 2% of it. Those medieval peasants eating nothing but spinach were probably still iron deficient. So that iron-packed spinach making Popeye strong? It's all based on a misunderstanding that's been fooling people for 150 years. Number 1. The Great Carrot Conspiracy. The British military created one of the most successful lies in history during World War II. They needed to hide their new radar technology that let their pilots spot German bombers in the dark, so they created a ridiculous cover story. Their pilots could see in the dark because they ate lots of carrots. The British government even created a character called Dr. Carrot for their propaganda, a carrot wearing a white lab coat, telling kids to eat their vegetables. German intelligence fell for it completely. Carrots do contain vitamin A, which your eyes need to function, but eating more carrots won't give you superhero night vision any more than eating spinach will turn you into Popeye. Once you have enough vitamin A, eating more doesn't help at all. It's like trying to make your phone battery go above 100%. This lie was so convincing that people still believe it today. 80 years later, the British government managed to hide their secret radar technology and get kids to eat their vegetables. That's like telling your kid the Wi-Fi only works if they clean their room, and them actually believing it. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.